Hello viewer and welcome to Worldview. Worldview is a program designed to bring you up to speed with trending developments the world over. My name is Emedion James, reaching you live from Uyo. Let's take a look at some of the headlines that we have for you today. We begin with the Middle East, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas will pay for not returning Shiri Bibas. We'll also look at Vice President Vance defends Trump's negotiations with Russia and Ukraine, and also take a look at the Asian Pacific region, where plans diverted as China conducts rare military deal near Australia. Details of these stories and more coming up shortly on Worldview Today. Many thanks for staying tuned. Our first story today is that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said today that Israel would make Hamas pay for failing to release the body of hostage Shiri Bibas as agreed. Netanyahu accused Hamas of acting in an unspeakable cyclical manner by placing the body of a Gaza woman in a coffin instead of Shiri Bibas, who was kidnapped along with her two sons and her husband, Yadin, during the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, 2023.
כולנו זועמים על מפלצות החמאס. ארבעת ארונות יקירנו מחייבים אותנו יותר מתמיד להבטיח להישבע שמה שקרה ב7 באוקטובר לא יקרה שוב לעולם. קודמיהם של יקירנו זועק אלינו מן האדמה. הוא מחייב אותנו לבוא חשבון עם המרצחים השפלים. ונבוא איתם חשבון. הלב שלנו סדוק, אבל הרוח שלנו לא נשברת. ועם הרוח הזאת נחזיר את כל חטופינו, נשמיד את הרוצחים, נחסל את החמאס, ויחד בעזרת השם.
The statement came after Israeli specialists said that one of the 4 bodies handed over by Hamas on Thursday was an unidentified woman and not Shiri Bibas, whose 2 sons, Kev and Ariel, were handed over and identified. Palestinian groups Hamas later said today that the remains of Israeli hostages, Shiri Bibas, appeared to have been mixed with other human remains from the rubble after an Israeli airstrike hit the place she was held in. In the meantime, Israeli Prime Minister and Israeli specialists said that one of the 4 bodies handed over by Hamas on Thursday was unidentified. Netanyahu also instructed the military to carry out an intensive operation in the West Bank after explosions on buses close to Tel Aviv on Thursday in what Netanyahu's office described as an attempted mass attack. No casualties were reported. The Israeli police earlier said there had been explosions on 3 buses in 2 Israeli suburbs outside Tel Aviv, and that 4 explosive devices had been found. Local media also reported the explosion had occurred on buses in depots and were empty. The explosions were a stark reminder of the devastating bus bombings in Israel that were a hallmark of the Palestinians' uprising of 2000s, although such attacks are now rare. The military also said in a statement that it was assisting the police and Shin Bet intelligence agency in the investigation and also searching for suspects, advising the public to remain vigilant. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the explosion. Netanyahu has met with the defense minister, head of the military and Shin Bet, and the police commissioner following the explosions. Also, a police spokesperson said that improvised explosive devices with timers had been identified and public transportation had been searched for any further devices. This is the wrong track up now. I'm talking about a bus explosion. This is Hezbollah.
Okay, sorry.
Please check. Thank you.
Coming to you. You know.
Away from that, the United States envoy to the Middle East said that President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza was not about evicting Palestinians, and the conversation about Gaza's future was being shifted towards how to create a better future for Palestinians. Trump proposed on February 4th the U.S. should take over Gaza, with Palestinians resettled in other places, including Egypt and Jordan, a suggestion which caused an international outcry. However, speaking at a Miami's conference hosted by a non-profit linked to the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund, U.S. Envoy Stephen Witkoff said that Trump's comments on Gaza were more about trying different solutions to those proposed over the previous 50 years. Let's take a listen.
Tied to the physical space that you're in today. A better life is about a better opportunity. The last 50 years of doing things was not a correct way of doing things, and that he's going to change it up because all of those iterations have not worked. He's also telling the Middle East that he wants to be transparent with the Palestinian people. Gaza today is uninhabitable and will probably be uninhabitable for at least the next 10 to 15 years. That's how much work has to be done there. I think everybody wants to see peace in the region, Sean, and peace in the region means a better life for the Palestinians. A better life is not necessarily tied to the physical space that you're in today. A better life is about a better opportunity, better financial conditions, better aspirations for you and your family. That doesn't occur because you get to pitch a tent in the Gaza Strip and you're surrounded by 30,000 munitions that could go off at any moment. It's a dangerous place to live today. And the president...
He further said that the war between Israel and Hamas has left much of Gaza destroyed and littered with unexploded ordnance, and it was impossible to see how people could return. Still in the Middle East, Lebanon's Hezbollah will bury its former leader Hassan Nasrallah on Sunday, nearly 5 months after he was killed in an Israeli airstrike, in a mass funeral aimed at showing political strength after the group emerged badly weakened from last year's war. Nasrallah was killed on September 27 in an Israeli airstrike as he met commanders in a bunker in Beirut's southern suburbs, a stunning blow in the early phase of an Israeli offensive that has left the Iran-backed group a shadow of its former self. Revered by Hezbollah supporters, Nasrallah led the Shiite Muslim group through decades of conflict with Israel, overseeing its transformation into a military force with regional sway and becoming one of the most prominent Arab figures in generations. The funeral in Beirut's southern suburbs will also honor Hashim Safieddine, who led Hezbollah for 1 week after Nasrallah's death, before he was also killed by Israel, underlining how deeply Israeli intelligence has penetrated the paramilitary group. He will be buried in the south on Monday. In a separate development, U.S. President Donald Trump's envoy for the Ukraine conflict met President Volodymyr Zelenskiy in Kyiv on Thursday, but there was no immediate word on whether their talks had helped smooth over an unprecedented wartime rift between the once firm allies, and key U.S. officials indicated that major frustrations remain. Zelenskiy had early struck a reconciliatory tone after accusing Trump of repeating Russian disinformation in response to the U.S. president's accusation that Ukraine had started the 3-year-old war with Russia. Trump went on to refer to Zelenskiy as a dictator who should act fast or lose his country. Let's take a listen.
He refuses to have elections, is slow in
the real Ukrainian polls, I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh, no, his polls are good. Give me a break. Every city is being demolished. They look like a demolition site, every single one of them. And the only thing he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, Yasser, to say that he's pretty easy, pretty easy. A dictator without elections. Zelenskiy better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast.
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating.
Yes. Well, let Zelensky talk.
Якщо хтось хоче мене поміняти прямо зараз, то прямо зараз ніяк не вийде. Я би так сказав. А друга історія, раз вже говоримо про 4%, ми бачили цю дезінформацію, ми розуміємо, що вона йде від Росії, ми розуміємо це, і у нас є докази, що ці цифри, вони обговорюються між Америкою і Росією. Ну, тобто, на жаль, президент Трамп з великою повагою до нього відносимося як до лідера народу, який ми дуже поважаємо, американський народ, який нас постійно підтримує. На жаль, живе в цьому дезінформаційному просторі. Я вважаю, що Сполучені Штати Америки допомогли Путіну вийти.
Trump, in office for just a month, is pushing for a quick deal to end the war and has alarmed Washington's European allies by leaving them and Ukraine out of initial talks with Russia. In the meantime, the U.S. is refusing to co-sponsor a draft UN resolution marking 3 years since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine that backs Ukraine's territorial integrity and again demands Russia withdraw its troops. 3 diplomatic sources told newsmen in a potential strike shaped by Ukraine's most powerful Western allies. Reports say Washington has also objected at threats. In a statement, the group of 7 nations was planning to issue next week that could condemn Russia's aggression. Meanwhile, the U.S. refusal to agree to language that has been regularly used by the UN and G7 since February 2022 comes amid a widening rift between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy and U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump is trying to rapidly end the war in Ukraine and sent a team to hold talks with Russia this week in Saudi Arabia without the involvement of Kyiv.
Disappointed in what's happened. I've been watching this for 3 years. It's a war that would have never happened if I was president, and I've been watching these people being killed at levels that you've rarely seen, not even close, since the Second World War. And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives.
Elsewhere, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance on Thursday defended Donald Trump's negotiations with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, saying it could help bring about the end of the Ukraine war.
A lot of these issues are tough. It's going to take a smart statesman to figure this stuff out, but we've got that in the White House, and I really believe that we're on the cusp of peace in Europe for the first time in 3 years because we have leadership from the Oval Office, and we haven't had it in 4 years in this country.
A U.S. delegation led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio met in Riyadh with a Russian delegation on Tuesday to discuss how to end the Ukraine war. Ukraine was not included, prompting complaints from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy. Still in the Ukraine and Russia war scene, a senior industry source told newsmen today that Ukraine plans to import up to 800 million cubic meter of gas from Europe in February and March to compensate for a sometimes 40% drop in production after Russia's missile strikes on the sector. Russia has focused many past missiles and drone attacks on Ukraine's electricity sector since its 2022 invasion, but it has stepped up attacks on gas fields in recent weeks. Ukrainian state gas firm Naftogaz and major private energy company TEX has said that Russia had attacked and damaged the facility at least twice so far in February. Before the strikes, Ukraine produced about 52 million cubic meters of gas a day, while it consumed between 110 and 140 MCM a day in winter. It covered the gap from gas storage. We'll go on a quick break, but after the break, G20 foreign ministers gathered amid tensions over trade and Ukraine. Just stay joined to us for these and many more stories right after the breather. Many thanks for staying tuned to Worldview on Spectrum TV. Let's move now to Africa. In Africa, foreign ministers from the G20 top economies met in South Africa on Thursday amid tensions between members over the Ukraine war, trade disputes, and with the top U.S. diplomats staying away owing to a feud with the host. The G20 countries, which represent some 85% of global GDP and 3/4 of trade, often struggle to see eye to eye, but geopolitical rifts since Russia's 2022 Ukraine's invasion have rendered it more fractious than ever. The discord has increased since President Donald Trump took office a month ago and has implemented rapid changes in Washington's trade and foreign policies. Elsewhere, France has said it would keep 80 military personnel in Ivory Coast, largely for training purposes, as it handed over control of a military base in the commercial capital amid a scaling back of its forces across West and Central Africa. At the ceremony in Abidjan, French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu said France was not disappearing and further added that the 80 military personnel would form the basis of a joint detachment depending on the needs that they express, particularly in terms of training. Forces from former colonial power, France, had been deployed in Ivory Coast for decades, helping President Alassane Ouattara take office in 2011 after his predecessor, Laurent Gbagbo, refused to acknowledge defeat in the 2010 election. Still in Africa, officials said that the Commission in Military Junta led Niger had recommended a minimum 5-year transition to democratic rule following national discussions. After a coup in 2023, when the army seized power and ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, Niger's junta proposed a 3-year timeline for a transition back to civilian rule. However, West Africa's main regional bloc, ECOWAS, rejected the proposal. Following political disagreement, Niger and its neighbors Mali and Burkina Faso decided to leave the bloc and form the Alliance of Sahel States. In a separate development, Swedish police are investigating a suspected case of sabotage of an undersea telecom cables in the Baltic Sea, and the country's Coast Guard had deployed a vessel to the area where multiple seabird cables had been damaged in recent months. The Baltic Sea region is on alert, and the NATO allies has boosted its presence after a series of power cable, telecom and gas pipeline outage since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Most have been caused by civilian ships dragging their anchors. Finnish telecom operator Cinia said today that it had detected minor damage on its Sea Lion undersea fiber optic link connecting Finland and Germany, but there was no impact on the cable's functionality. Swedish police said they were investigating the matter because the breach had occurred in Sweden's economic zone, police spokesperson Matthias Rutagard said. Lastly, in the news at this hour, planes flying between Australia and New Zealand have been diverted as China conducts a closely scrutinized military exercise in nearby waters that may involve live fire. The rare presence of 3 Chinese naval ships in the Tasman Sea has put both antipodian countries on alert in recent days, with Australia calling it unusual. Australian airline Qantas told newsmen that it was temporarily adjusted the routes of its planes, and other carriers have reportedly done the same. China has said the exercise, which is taking place in international waters, is in accordance with international law. Let's take a listen.
An alert that it would be conducting these activities, including the potential use of live fire. It's outside of Australia's exclusive economic zone. Australia and New Zealand ships and P-8 aircraft have been monitoring the Chinese fleet while they have been travelling down the coast of Australia, off the coast, as you would expect us to be doing.
And that's all we have for you on Worldview today. Do ensure to follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website at spectrumtvlive.ng. I am Emedion James, and you've been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.